Guruve Gaura Chanjaya Radhikaya Tadare Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tada Bhaktaya Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Dhanavad Pranam devotees. So this is a short Q&A. I'm trying to, of course, as I always say, stay abreast of and up to date on the questions and answers that come in. So here there was just a few questions, and I'm going to try to answer them. Not in full, but at least in synopsis. So the first question was that Al Srila Prabhupada is mentioned in the 10th canto Srimad Bhagavatam that for a person who has struggles with sex life or sexual energy, then they should hear the Ras Lila of Shri Radha and Krishna. Dandavad Sadhana Siddha Prabhu. That they should hear the Ras Lila of Shri Radha and Krishna. So the statement is true, but there's obviously some caveats and some flushing out that needs to be done. The actual verse is Vikridam Vrajavarubirijam Travishnu Shranvito Anushunu Yadvanayadyaha. So here it says Shranvita. Shranvita means in the category of those who have Paramatik Shraddha. It means those whose faith is realized faith. Continuously, anusranu, continuously hearing from them. So here the indication would be that it's not only the hearing of Ras Lila Katha, but it's the hearing of everything also in relation to Ras Lila Katha, including what is all Jiva Tattva, Bhakti Tattva, Rasa Tattva, because without understanding these things, then the nature of Ras Lila won't be digested. Hearing it will still give the potency of the power coming from it, from any Harikatha, to develop the attraction to coming to a level in which it can be digested. But unless the other tattvas are understood, then you won't be able to digest or really understand what is Ras Lila, right? So here it means Anushanu, and also the word Anu here means continuously, but it means while doing anugatya to that person who has paramatik shraddha, means sadhu guru. While following them, and anu here also means anutva. Anutva means a sense of humility, a sense of being like very small, right? So very humble. So having these three things, anutva, very much humility, anu meaning continuously, meaning not only continuously hearing, but continuously anu following the example of Sadhan Bhajan, hearing in that way, that will have the effect of replacing the Jad Ras, means the material taste of sex life, with Param Drishta Nivartate, the superiority of Seva to the divine Adi Rasa or conjugal Rasa of Shri Radha Krishna Yuga. Understand? So it's not just hearing will take away sex life. So it's hearing, and here's the way in which hearing will remove mundane attraction of sex life. In that same regard, another question came in regarding, is not celibacy one of the elements? Well, let me look at it. I have to look at it because these people write really complicated questions. Hold on. Give me a second. Oh. Isn't it that celibacy can lead to repression? And isn't repression one of the problems that's been faced in our society in terms of honesty, genuineness, and then he goes on to enumerate a number of other problems that have arisen from the lack of honesty, openness, etc., etc. So no, celibacy and repression are not axiomatically to be equated, because everybody practicing celibacy is not repressed. So Repression comes when there is a struggle between the material influences that we have and the spiritual impressions that are pushing us forward in spiritual life. When those two things have an intersection, sometimes a difficulty arises in dealing with that push from both sides, so to speak. Right? So it's not that that can necessarily be couched as repression. That is the unfoldment process in Bhakti. I've been speaking on this over the last month or so. Maybe on tomorrow I'll have a facilitation of Harikatha at our mandir here. And I'll also speak about the psychology of Bhakti, because I think for many devotees, it's something that's misunderstood. That Bhakti does not have a emotional, psychological component to deal with various phases of the unfolding process. And therefore, it even leads devotees to going outside the arena of Bhakti and search out various other modalities in order to satisfy dealing with psychological or emotional. I'm not talking about acute psychological emotional problems here. I'm talking about the occurrences that take place while we're trying to unfold in Bhakti, the challenges, the peaks and the valleys that take place organically while you're trying to practice. So some devotees having an emotional response and psychological response to those times, they don't understand it within Bhakti that there is the modality or the ability to deal with them. It's just that devotees, sometimes when we're reading the teachings of our Guru Vargas, our Parampara, we tend to look at it more academically than as a mode of application. In other words, we read it and it's information. I'll put the information in my data bank because this is part of Bhakti. But we fail to look at it as this is the manual for application of something. So I've been speaking from Madhurya Kandamini of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Pad. And there, especially in the beginning of Madhurya Kandamini, he goes over Anistita Bhakti. He goes over the four genesis of two things being material influences and two things being previous spiritual influences, and then how they manifest four types of foreign authors. So I'm going over all these things on Sunday. But this is the methodology by which we can understand how to deal with psychological and emotional issues when they arise due to that pressure coming from material and spiritual influences simultaneously pressing. Or sometimes it's just an overwhelming thrust of material impressions, right? Because remember, we have been on a sojourn in this world from Anadikal. There's no beginning time when this took place. So now we've taken up the path of Bhakti. We cannot exactly determine when. You can kind of look at the development of someone in Bhakti and you get an idea of the Praktanaka samskars, means the previous samskars they had to be in the position they're in relation to Bhakti. But everybody's individual, right? Everybody's karmic DNA as well as their Bhakti DNA is completely unique to them. So everybody's in a very unique position. So one of the things is that we certainly cannot always equate celibacy with repression. For a lot of people, celibacy is an organic outgrowth of practicing Bhakti, or in some cases not. Some cases, my brother ran a business and his business partner practiced celibacy. He practiced celibacy because he felt that it gave him the concentration and energy to pursue financial success. So he became a millionaire. He was genuinely a millionaire, but that was his goal in following celibacy. So, and he obviously did not feel repressed because he felt that the taste of material success was his reciprocation or his remuneration from his practice of celibacy. Of course, in Bhakti, we don't couch things as looking for remuneration for what we do. So if someone is genuinely practicing celibacy in the arena of Bhakti, genuinely, key word here, practicing celibacy in the arena of Bhakti, it's because there's been some organic unfoldment in their consciousness that either if they're in Grihastha life and they're not having children anymore, they've decided not to put energy into intimacy or sexual dealings because it does remove the focus of consciousness from completely being anya abhilas sunya, means having no other desire except anukuliyana krishnanu silano, desire to please Krishna. Because in the dealings of intimacy in the material world, it is chock full of self-interest. There's no question about it, right? Even when we're doing it dharmically for procreation, still self-interest will naturally arise there. That's just, even in Bhagavatam it's mentioned, one feature to encourage procreation was the pleasure energy put on the genitalia of males and females to give them impetus to do procreation. Because if you read Srimad Bhagavatam, you will see that in the beginning, when Brahma's doing the creation, many people don't want to become involved in it. Chatusana, 4 Kumaras, Narada. And Narada convinces the Prajapatis like Prachetas and others not to become involved. So that energy is placed there just to encourage procreation. You understand? But because it's of the nature of material pleasure, then people become involved in it even outside the idea of its intended seva purpose, which is procreation. You understand? And of course, dharmically, it's been understood if somebody is in a dharmic marriage, then there's different levels of practice of celibacy, inclusive of intimacy. But our Srila Prabhupada made the point that the actual ideal for those practicing bhakti in pursuit of pure bhakti, that sex only for procreation should be there. And if that's not happening, then we should try to put that energy into bhakti, right? So that doesn't always mean repression. And in fact, I don't even know that we can have a metric to determine how much of it is repression, how much of it is not, etc., etc. Those are very individual considerations. So for many people, it is truly param drishyanvartate. What they're tasting in bhakti is sufficiently satisfying their consciousness in such a way they don't want to divest from that absorption for becoming involved in intimate dealings. Right? So also, in the question, the person kind of wrote a chain of events with their effects. So one thing becoming repression, leading to dishonesty and hypocrisy, and there's a whole list here. But many of these things also come from other concerns. It is not just repression in sexuality. It is the lack of perhaps the kind of association that gives inspiration in bhakti. Perhaps it is because of the sense of practicing in a collective mindset. I gave a talk the other day and mentioned, and I'll make this part of the talk tomorrow, we're all individuals practicing in a collective. We're not a collective. And where our acharyas have written in Sastra, we should practice in the association of devotees. Here it meant Mahatra Sadhu Sangha. Swajati Asheshnik De Mahatra Sadhu Sangha. Those who are affectionate in the same mood we have and who are superior in realization to us. So this is the meaning of Sadhu Sangha. Sadhu Sangha did not simply mean the gathering of aspirants. The gathering of aspirants is the gathering of aspirants. And because we're aspirants, then there is the various idiosyncrasies and nuances of each person. Excuse me, again, I'm always multitasking here. And normally this is the time also that we're making preparations or just prepping everything for Thakurji's offering. So it is not that simply being in the collective of aspirants that we all should have the collective mindset and therefore everybody should be moving homogeneously through the process of bhakti. We're all individuals. And a lot of times what does create the rising of duplicity, dishonesty, all these kind of things, is the need to try to satisfy a collective mindset. I either want everybody to know that I'm actually very good at my practice, or I'm critical of those I see who may not be, I think is good at practicing. So all of these kind of things is due to being in the collective mindset. If you're an individual practicing in a collective, then my Guru Parapadma is often told, oil your own machine. It means concentrate on your practice. Concentrate on your practice. And by concentrating on your practice, that is already a honesty. People, also there's a thrust, and I'll speak a little bit about this tomorrow as well, there is now a thrust of the idea that everyone can come together, and by openly being honest in a collective of aspirants, this is a good thing. It is not. It is really not. For everybody to come together and give, exposure to their own various struggles, this, that, what it does is it brings out that struggle from within you, where the most competent arrangement, which is Antaryami, Sri Bhagavan himself, and if you are truly having the proper mood with Guru, Guru's presence is also there. So the two most powerful elements to help you reconcile any problem is within you. Sri Guru and Antaryami, Super Soul. So to then take whatever you have, which is toxic in character, right, and put it out into the mandal, into the Vaishnava Sangha of other aspirants who also have toxic issues, and they put all of that out. It's like everybody taking their garbage from the house, bringing it to a mandir or a Ishtagoshti, which is really Ishtagoshti means a place, Gosht, in which the glorification of the Ishtadev should be done. But now we'll take all of the garbage bringing from home and place it in the mandir and, say, wow, I'm relieved of the smell of that from my own personal house, but now I'll just put it in the mandir in the association of everyone else. So this is really not a good habit, right? Because unless you are revealing something to Guru or Sadhu in whom you have great faith, who has the capacity to both diagnose and treat whatever that thing is, by bringing it out in front of everybody else, it only puts it in the atmosphere. It doesn't dissipate it. So you feel some sense of relief because now I've projected what I was suffering from or struggling with into the general atmosphere and let other people carry that burden. Then other people will also do that. So now what we've done is we've essentially picked up, just like I was giving the example of people each bring their individual garbage from home and they put it down, whereas you had one bag before. Now if there are 10 or 20 people there, right, and everybody's bags are of different sizes, and now you try to equally split that, you may end up with more baggage than you came with. You understand? Or if you have less baggage, you put that baggage on someone else. So this is not Vaishnav dealings. You understand? This is not Vaishnav dealings. And it is a misinterpretation of Guyam Akyati Prichati, one of the exchanges of love between devotees. Tadati Pratagri Nati Guyam Akyati Prichate, Bhukte Bojayate Chaiva, Sarviram Priti Lakshanam. So Priti Lakshan means it has to have the Lakshan, the quality of Priti. So how is it love for me to come and project all of my struggles onto you? You'll hear them. By hearing them, you have to acknowledge them, and that comes into your chitta. Just like my Gurudev says, this is the reason, don't criticize anyone. Because when you criticize, you create a bridge from your chitta, your consciousness, to theirs, and on that bridge, whatever faults they have comes back to you. So this is not a good practice or modality in the name of community building and other things, to simply come together and put out the nature of whatever kind of toxicity may be going on in our practice or unfoldment of the practice, and just put that out in the Vaishnav Mandal, among other aspects. If you are in a situation, just like my Guru Parapadma, I used to observe, if someone had any personal issue, he would say, come and see me privately. He could have taken that issue in the open form of Vaishnava. No, come and see me privately. Because this is the way that one should reveal and deal with a particular issue. And when that is taking place, and one is acting as an individual, rather than acting in a collective mindset, one does not feel the anxiety, pressure, remorse, regret, and other kinds of more debilitating emotional states that come from thinking I have to be part of a homogeneous collective, and if I'm falling short of that, I have to keep it secret, and that creates a whole other kind of dishonesty and pressure and so forth, so on. So no need. You're an individual practicing bhakti in a collective. And therefore, whatever your unfolding process is, has been acknowledged, first of all, by our acharyas. They have not left us void when it comes to dealing with the particular psychological and emotional happenings that go on while we're practicing and unfolding. So, as I mentioned from Madhurya Kandamini, if you will study it closely, especially under guidance, then you will be able to take those wonderful things acknowledged by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Pad, have self-analysis, and then also have the application of what is the recommendation within the framework of bhakti to deal with those things. Because we have to remember that faith, Shraddhavanjan, Bhakti Adhikari. Shraddhavanjan, Bhakti Adhikari. The Shraddha, this faith, is the currents we have, right? Kanishtamadam Uttama Shraddha Anusari. The particular level of eligibility we have for revelation in bhakti comes from Shraddha. Shraddha is the prabhav or influence of Swarup Shakti. So, Ado Shraddha. In the beginning, that Shraddha shows its potency by breaking the abhinavesh of the jiva to the material world. Something the jiva could not accomplish on their own. Swato na sambhavanti anya gyanatva ganadobhavet, 11th canto Bhagavatam, this verse is stated that swato na, the jiva on their own can't break the abhinavesh, means the absorption in the material energy. Material energy has those 5 features: avidya, asmita, rag, dvesh, abhinavesh. So abhinavesh means an inextricable absorption. But when Shraddha comes, Shraddha Varajam Shraddha Anupayani Varajam, Bhakti Unmukhi Chitta Vritti Vishesh. Bhakti has the prabhav, power of Sarup Shakti, to break the abhinavesh of the jiva and turn the jiva towards Bhagavan Seva. How powerful is Shraddha? So we have to be careful not to divest. When we place our Shraddha in bhakti, and particularly in the sadhu, in the practice of bhakti, we should not divest. It's mentioned that Shraddha will grow, and when it becomes mature, Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Kohe Shudrida Nishtoy Krishna Bhakti Koil Savakam Kritoy. It's described by this word Shraddha. Shraddha Shabde Kohe. We are saying, Kohe means we're by this word, Shabda Shabde, by the sound of this word, Kohe, we mean to say. Shabda Shade Vishwas. A Vishwas should come. Vishwas. So V here means a specific power. What is that power? To have a kind of faith that is compared to your breathing. Because one meaning in Sanskrit of swas is a breathing, taking a breath. The faith that we have that the next breath we take will come because of Bhagavan's mercy is called Vishwas. You understand? Next breath is not guaranteed. But we do so many things on the faith that the next breath will come. That's a faith that we have in Bhagavan. The next breath will come. You understand? So this kind of faith, which is the kind of faith you trust in Bhagavan that my next breath will come, have that kind of faith in bhakti. You understand? Therefore it says Krishna Bhakti Koila. Have that kind of faith in Krishna Bhakti. Then Savakama Kripta Hoy. That this bhakti can accomplish everything. So nothing is left out. So no need to go to any other kind of modality. No need to have different kinds of groups and introduce various kinds of, sort of material ideas that have come up from within the spectrum of materialists. Not for pursuit of pure bhakti. Sometimes people think that we're degrading the accomplishments, whether it's academic, whether it is social, or any other line, that we're degrading those things. We're not. Just like devotees once asked me about the term spiritual bypassing. And I told them we don't want to put that in the lexicon of our Vaishnav dealings, because the person who generated that term was an individual. He was a professor and he's a psychologist, a sociologist, and he was practicing Buddhism he observed some things in his own particular circle, and he coined this term spiritual bypassing, which meant that people tend to use spirituality as a bypass for dealing with actual issues. Well, in fact, that's a very inappropriate term in bhakti, because as I just mentioned, bhakti genuinely has that power. Therefore, it is not spiritual bypassing to suggest to someone to increase the depth, sincerity, intensity of bhajan practice as a way to deal with your emotional, psychological, or other kinds of struggles or issues. It would not be spiritual bypassing. Sometimes people will say, well, in the political, political dynamic in the world, to just become absorbed in, well, because there's a lack of spirituality, that viewpoint is spiritual bypassing because it doesn't deal with the injustices, this and that. Reality is that from a Krishna conscious perspective, because it's an absolute truth, if the absolute truth was understood, would the social, economic, and other kinds of problems exist? Not only if it's understood, but if it was applied, would that exist? It would not. Therefore, it is an absolute fact that within the context of bhakti, Krishna bhakti koile savakam kritoy, all issues can be solved. So that is not spiritual bypassing, that is spiritual reality and the power of spiritual reality. In the absence of realizing that spirituality, a person may conclude that spiritual bypassing is being applied because we're saying, oh, we'll take the application of bhakti and apply it to remedy whatever struggle or issue you're going through. No, bhakti, that's spiritual bypassing. But what I will do is I will go and attend a seminar on a particular modality. Now, how will whatever you do work if you don't invest faith in it? If you don't have faith in something, how will it work? Therefore, it axiomatically means I will have to divest some faith from bhakti and apply it to this other modality. And what that does say is that the term Krishna bhakti koili savakam kritahoy, that savakam, anything, krita, can be solved by the power in bhakti. I am divesting faith from that statement. Because I'm saying this modality has an ability that bhakti does not have. And the pradhan practice in bhakti is Harinam. And Mahaprabhu is saying, Nam Nam Akari Bahuda Nija Sava Shakti. I personally place Nija, my own Shakti, in Harinam. Therefore, to tell someone, oh, you should deepen your chanting, deepen Nam Bhajan, it will solve so many things. Well, Prabhu, that sounds like spiritual bypassing. But I will go and I will, in this arena, in a particular modality, I'll be able to solve that issue. Therefore, that modality, by action that a person takes, is showing they've put a divestment of faith from bhakti and an investment of faith in that modality. And sometimes it's difficult for persons to hear. One of the reasons is because most of the modalities that people divest faith from bhakti and invest faith in that modality are in the mode of sattva gun. And the nature of the mode of sattva gun is that it conditions one to a sense of happiness. So self-interest, I've explained this many times, I'm not going to do it here because I've really already extrapolated from an initial question all the way into this arena. But self-interest is the biggest obstacle in bhakti because it's so difficult to give up. And when we're in the face of any kind of challenge, we go back to two things, a sense of doership and a sense of self-interest. Really in reverse order. A sense of self-interest producing a sense of doership to adjust things to satisfy that self-interest. So we have to realize, we have to begin to at least comprehend the fact that everything is included in bhakti. And my initial sojourn into this line of thinking was that it's very important to understand that the acharyas did not leave a void in this area. They didn't, write Jiva Goswami 400,000 verses, 18,000 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita. So literally millions of verses when you add up all the writings of our acharyas. They did not miss out on, oh, well, what do we do if a sadhaka or a person who's trying to practice has this emotional issue or that psychological issue while trying to move forward? To suggest that they did not accommodate that would really be aparad. Therefore, we have to, through association with mature devotees, right, see where do I find in the canon of our theology how to deal with this or how to deal with that. And if we approach Sri Guru and Guru says, oh, how is your Nam Bhajan? Are you attentive in Nam Bhajan? Are you synthesizing Nam Bhajan and Harikatha, the Swarup of Nam? And then we think, oh, this is spiritual bypassing. I need to hear something else. Something more related to my mind, my body, my, I, mine. Understand? Because now we are going in the opposite direction. It may not be grossly, just like a person may not do a complete 180 in relation to bhakti, but it is possible to do some lesser degree of a turn and start pursuing something else. Even if you're not fully pursuing that thing, but you start to equate that thing has the same kind of efficacy or some superior efficacy in me attaining my goal than bhakti does. If not, then I have to find within the theology of bhakti where is the mechanism for me to apply to solve this problem, whatever that problem might be. Now, I've been asked several times, someone has gone, by their karmic arrangement, has undergone some acute mental issue. That's obvious that there may need be help of some medical professional to deal with an acute problem regarding a medical situation, which that's what it is, a psychological or medical situation that's arisen. So I'm certainly not saying don't do those things. I'm saying that devotees who are not in any acute condition, but are simply experiencing the natural unfoldment of emotional and psychological adjustments that take place while we're practicing bhakti, need not look outside the arena of bhakti for how to deal with those particular states. In the discussion of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he's identified 6 kinds of anistita bhakti. But we have to examine them very closely to see how they relate to different psychological and emotional states. Utsamai, or the initial unsubstantiated, I don't like to use the word false. False enthusiasm is what it's translated as, and that's an adequate English translation. But I would say unsubstantiated enthusiasm. Unsubstantiating means your enthusiasm is not backed by realizations yet. But from self-interest in observing that bhakti has qualities I can resonate with, a false enthusiasm is generated in the very beginning of the practice. Right? So that's why they use this term false enthusiasm. A kind of enthusiasm based around self-interest. Right? So it's not really substantiated by realizations of seva, etc., etc. Right? That hopefully comes in the future, that Rupa Goswami said, Utsaha Nischaya Dhayat, that your utsav will be born of realizations in the taste of seva. But in the beginning, it's not like that. So we have to begin to understand these terms, like Utsamai and Ganatarala, because they are related to the different stages of unfoldment before bhakti has become substantiated by realization in the stage of Nishta. So they call Anishtita Bhakti. Right, so anyways, tomorrow I'll be talking about these things more. But here I was just trying to answer those 2 questions that were arose. There were some others, but I don't have time. I'll have to finish preparing the offering. But all right, my Dandavat Pranam Vancha Kalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhuve Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Also, if there are any devotees who are on locally, I did see some devotees now. I know Abhay Prabhu was on. And I don't know whether the devotees from Alachua here were on, but if you're coming tomorrow, I'm going to try to definitely, be there a little early, and to get the bhajan and stav and stuti, we'll do. But then to get into the topic, because I want to leave plenty of time for discussion, and at the same time get the topic fully expressed. So, all right, my Dandavat Pranam, Jai Radhe Radhe.